But apparently, in Israel and Hamas, with this war going on, they have decided to do a ceasefire. They finally said enough bodies have died. Enough people have lost their legs, their arms, their lives. Let's stop all the bombing for one second. You give me some hostages, and we'll make a deal. Let's just get into the video, man.
Welcome back here on Live Now from Fox, and you are taking a live look over at the Israel-Gaza border. Now, over the last several weeks, there's been a lot of talk about possible deals on the table to release the remaining more than 100 hostages that are still being held by Hamas at this hour. The Washington Post now reporting details of the latest proposed deal, to which we are told that Israel has broadly agreed and Hamas is considering. Again, all of this negotiation still underway at this point. This would include a 6-week pause in the war, with Israeli forces withdrawing from populated areas of Gaza, as well as a big boost to humanitarian aid. I want to talk about this and other topics here, so let's bring in Aviv Ezra, the acting consul general of Israel in New York, joining us now live. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today.
To me, it's very interesting how this war did not even last as long as Ukraine and Russia. But they have already decided to come to a ceasefire. I mean, this is not the first ceasefire, but this is going to be the longest. It's 6 weeks. And it hasn't even been a good 200 days of war. But at least they're trying to find some type of resolution. Before it gets even worse. But let's continue.
Thank you so much for having me again.
All right. Well, first off, I just want to get your thoughts overall, because I mentioned this, but over the past couple months here, we've heard several possible deals that have been on the table to get the rest of the hostages released. Does it appear that we are any closer to a deal actually being made here and those hostages being released?
Well, after the atrocities of October 7th, as we have discussed in the past, our two goals were as follows. First of all, to make sure that this does not happen again. But the second, of course, which is not less important, is to bring back our hostages. So originally, there were 240. In the first release of hostages, we did everything we can to make sure that we could create a situation where they come back home. At this point, we have about 136, and we work very closely with our allies like the United States of America, but also with the mediators like Qatar and Egypt that have a direct line with Hamas to make sure that we bring back our hostages alive today, sooner rather than later. Now, the idea is that we will embrace any opportunity to do that, either in diplomatic measures, and this is the diplomatic path that I've described right now, but also we understand that without beefing the military pressure, Hamas will actually not move forward in a deal like that. They are not humanitarian, they have not become humanitarian, and the only way to get them to make that deal is when they understand that their life is on the threat, and that's why we're beefing parallel to the diplomatic pressure. We're beefing also the military pressure in the southern part of Gaza.
And you kind of touched on this already, but just kind of explain to me the U.S. involvement in this deal, because we know that Qatar is very much involved in this. But what about the U.S. overall?
We're very grateful for our U.S. partners, strategic partners, for being involved in this. First of all, because there are U.S. citizens among the hostages. If you remember, the atrocities were not just towards Israelis and Jews, but they were also towards U.S. citizens. There were about 30 of them that were butchered, and there were around 10 of them that were abducted. So the United States also, of course, focusing on U.S. citizens, but also in the understanding that if we do not get, and I refer you, if we do not get our hostages back home safely, there will not be an ending to this military campaign. And in this sense, we are highly appreciative both to the administration, from the president through secretaries of the state, secretaries of defense.
Now, do you believe that they're actually going to give all these people back? nice and safely. After Israel dug up grave sites looking for tunnels, after Israel's done pretty much leveled the entire Gaza Strip, killed so many Hamas members already. Luckily, there's actually talks about it, but as you heard, Hamas is not even, they don't really care. They don't really care for talks. They don't really care. So it's going to be interesting to see what actually happens, if they're going to release all the hostages one time, or if they're going to release a couple and get back to war.
National Security Advisor, they're all very instrumental in assisting us to reach out to players like Qatar that unfortunately were for many years very close to Hamas, and now they are the only channel that really can make a difference in bringing these hostages back. We will once again embrace every opportunity to make it happen, and we want to make sure that parallel to that, of course, we will make a differentiation between Hamas, which is a monstrous killing machine, and between the innocent civilians that are there.
How has the U.S. relationship with Israel changed over the past several months since the war did break out back on October 7th? How has the relationship between the two changed? Has it changed?
You know, we don't see any daylight between Israel and the United States when it comes to their strategic goals, which is first eradicating Hamas's capabilities, meaning we want to make sure that they do not have the ability to go after us again, because we know they have the willingness. They would like to go after us again, in their words, again and again and again. We need to make sure that we deprive their military capabilities of doing that. And second, of course, agree with the fact that we want to bring the hostages. So there's no daylight in the strategic goals with the United States and Israel. And when I'm here also in New York, I meet also members of Congress, U.S. senators. We see a bipartisan, bicameral support for that. We see it on the state level. I've had amazing interactions with governors here, the governor of New York, the governor of New Jersey, the governor of Pennsylvania, governor of Ohio. They're all strongly in support of Israel's right for self-defense and duty for self-defense, and also on the municipal level. One of the amazing leaders here is the mayor of New York City that has come very strongly in support of Israel's right for self-defense.
And we know that Israel has placed these allegations against some of the employees, actually a large amount of employees that are part of the UNRWA. And the U.S. has cut its funding, and so have several other countries to that organization there. What does that say to you about the U.S. stance and the other countries' stance on where things stand there in the Middle East?
UNRWA is a UN organization. And the fact that we have substantially can prove that their personnel have been involved in the atrocities, including, and not limited to, but including storming our communities, including supporting the atrocities, including holding kidnapped hostages, it is truly mind-boggling that a UN staff that is under the payroll of the UN is committing and is taking part of a humanitarian.
That part is insane. That part is insane. So apparently, this UN group right here that is supposed to be allies with the U.S. and NATO and whoever's feeding and funding this group, they've been helping the enemy the entire time. It pretty much was stabbing the U.S. in the back the entire time, and whoever else was supporting them. That is insane. I mean, I know it's a dirty game out there, but this is wild. This is wild. But let's continue. Let's finish this.
Of crimes against humanity. It's really mind-boggling. So what we have done is we have sent these documented proofs to the U.S. and to many other countries around the world that are supporting the UNRWA. And both the United States, both the UK, Canada, Australia, Italy have actually decided to withdraw the support for UNRWA because it's once again unbelievable, ungraspable, and unimaginable that the UN teams that are under the payroll of the UN are committing these crimes against humanity.
I want to get
And by
your
the way,
take.
these are not just not rotten apple. This has to be a full reform, because this is not just I pinpointed a few examples, but there are more that illustrate the fact that we're talking about a serious problem here.
Of course. Well, also, I want to get your take on this as you are here in the U.S. Does it appear that most Americans do support Israel in this war against Hamas?
Yes, we see the polls very clearly. There's a strong understanding on behalf of the general public in the very, very high numbers of supporting Israel's, I would say, war for self-defense and war for our values. There's understanding that we're not fighting just for Israel, but we are actually a beacon of light for the free world in a challenging area. And therefore, we see it across the board, both on the general population and in many other segments of the population. We do have a challenge with the more younger crowds. I would say the 18 to the 24. And my take on it is that we need to do the context obviously is very complex, and there needs to be a kind of an in-depth approach to it. Some of these youngsters are receiving their information from TikTok or from social media or 15-second segments. And I think we need to do a better job to make sure that these misconceptions that are out there, will be clearer to them in terms of.
I support Israel. Obviously, I don't want to be seeing war. Obviously, I don't like seeing people dying senselessly. But I understand why Israel retaliated.